I don't know. I love Larry David, like, because like he's the person who everybody wishes they had in their friend group because he's willing to say the things that might seem offensive or might seem insensitive, and maybe are a little bit insensitive. But like if everybody walks around tiptoeing around everybody's feelings all the time, those people who could be better, myself included, if somebody were to just let them know, like, oh, it's not really, like, it's actually counterproductive for you to use that word because it shuts people's mind off, or it's, like, maybe you should, were a little bit kinder, like, it would be beneficial. Like, everybody, instead everybody's, like, in their own world. Oh, don't say anything to him. I think he might be on the spectrum. Or, oh, like, he comes from this household. I'm like, no, maybe he just needs somebody to give him a little bit of a pushback. I feel like we're breeding lonely narcissists.
If you were working with a coworker, right, and he or she came over to you after months of like working together, like going out together, maybe doing something, being normal mates at an office space, and they asked you like Mendel Silverman, like, hey, like I know you've been calling me he the past couple days, this and the other. I prefer being called by she. Would you mind doing it? I think for most of us, we would be like, oh, something like, okay, like, it doesn't take much for me to call you by this, or maybe call you they, them. Maybe she's too much. Maybe call you by they, them pronouns instead of calling you he. Maybe that's something we're willing to do. The point being is that we're way more willing to be sensitive towards other people in all these examples. And my question was simply, like, what has caused us to be more sensitive? Why are we more sensitive? Where are we progressing as a civilization? Where are we progressing as people? Because I think this is one of the very first times in global history in our civilization that we're like sensitive about like things that we say to each other in words, and like there's certain things you could and can't say, and like things on those lines. So that's a question that I posed to both of them.
What do they come up with? Because I mean, my instinct is first off, Jordan and Ben and all those people, all would also, if a coworker decided to ask them that, they would all agree to use them by their pronouns. It's just in a political context, they won't. The whole point of the political context is that they don't believe that you should be compelled to do that. And then also on a further level, that being nice, being nice isn't the ultimate virtue. It's just not. It's and especially when it comes at the sacrifice of truth and reality, and demanding that I speak a certain way, and commanding me to speak a certain way. I mean, the areas where I think we're caring more, obviously mental health is being talked about more, and well-being is being talked about more, and maybe it's not even being talked about more, it's just in everybody's faces all the time. Like, we get to hear everybody's individual stories, like the amount of people who we can get to know because there's a blog or an Instagram or a TikTok account for them. Like, everybody just gets to share their perspective. And in a world where everybody's sharing their perspective, we're going to end up being able to empathize more with people in a way that we wouldn't have been able to in the past. But it's also more important than ever that that not just certain voices are loud, because in that you and I, who would be more reserved to put our opinions out there in the world, that might be contrary to what everybody else's niceness is alluding to. Right? You might see a post and be like, "What the hell?" And then like have an interesting take that goes on in your head, but then never say anything about it. And then that just, to me, that leaves the space. Conservative-minded people are going to be conservative with what they say. Conservative people are nice. Like, basically, the left is using conservative people's desire to be kind against them, to shoot themselves in the leg, and then to end up by being silent, creating a society that they don't want to raise their kids in. And if we just stopped being silent, it'd be a different world.
Going back to the sensitivity thing, so I think you're describing that we're being more sensitive because we have more means to be sensitive. Like, there's more out there, there's more data, there's more videos, there's more books, there's more blogs, whatever it might be.
Personal stories.
That would make us sensitive.
Yeah. Like personal stories.
We can be more empathetic because we have the space for it. Like, there's more things to be empathetic towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somewhere along those lines.
And I'll tell you what I think. For me, like, and because I think we both agree that we are more sensitive beings. Like, we have more to feel. I think the biggest thing is, I think what you mentioned, like, we have more to be able to feel towards. We see more stories, we see more anecdotes, we see more situations where people are emotional, so we can feel more towards it. But I think on a more abstract level, I really do believe that, like, as time goes along, as technology progresses, as civilization progresses, our mind becomes closer together. Like I think we're developing like a human mind, like a singular human mind. Like there'll be singularity is ultimately what I think like the world that I see it in say 100 years time is like progressing towards. Interconnectivity. All technology does is just brings us closer. Like you hear Facebook's message. Mark's first message is always just be able to be more connection. Everyone thinks it's more connection, more feeling, more thing, more exposure, whatever it is. You have someone like Andrew Tate who no one knew who he was 3-4 months ago. He popped in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, he had probably over, I don't know, 800 million people who knew who he was. In 2 weeks, in seconds. I think as the world goes together, we get more interconnected. I think we get more sensitive to each other, which means that we're willing to accept others more easily, more readily. And I think there's a process of right and left that pushes people from side to side. The extremes of right and left, whatever it might be, whether in sports and political, in philosophy and ideology and education, I think the polarities are just very, very strong and very worse. So like the right and left that we hear in America, it's just so noisy. There's so much noise around it that we think it's much better than it is. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all these other big, massive conglomerates of television news stations, the most views that they have in a month is a couple million. By a couple, I mean like 5-10 million. It is not a large population. You have a guy like CoffeeZilla, you know, on YouTube, who's just like making, you know, like videos in his $10 million studio, he so says all the time. And he's making videos about like people who are trying to fraud you. News? This is not news. This is just cool, interesting videos. The guy has 6 million subscribers. He gets more views on his stuff than all these people combined on a monthly basis. I mean, you want to jump it up to like Mr. Beast? I mean, like Mr. Beast is getting like a fifth of the population of America to watch his videos every single thing. Like the news that we hear, it's so like polarizing. The point is, I don't think it's effective. I don't think it translates into like what the whole population, all 340 million people, Americans, actually think and believe. It's the extremes on both ends that are just very noisy. But ultimately, just to put my point across, I think that we're becoming more sensitive because we consciously or unconsciously, we are moving towards a state where we all believe, think, and strive for the kind of the same things. Like we become like one mind. And I think the polarity on both sides brings us to that one mind. So as we become more sensitive to other people, we won't say certain things, we won't go certain places, we won't do certain things because we're sensitive about what others might think or might feel, and therefore like slowly like we morph like, okay, this is like the correct ways of how a human or a society should be. And I think ultimately it goes to singularity. Like one people, one nation, one soil. I think it goes there. How it looks like, where it's going to develop into, who knows? Is it going to be like that? I don't know. But I think the progression of it is towards that. That's what I see like in sensitivity.
I do you really think that we've become more sensitive you think we've become more connected? It seems like the symptoms of loneliness, which are addiction, suicide, depression, anxiety, have never been higher, and we've never been more connected. And so I'm not so hopeful. Like I without people like you make sure in your real life, in your day-to-day life, having real people to connect with that will criticize you, right? Like this, to me, it's like you need feedback, like negative and positive, and you need to be able to trust it. Like otherwise, you'll go insane. Because if you have to like, oh, don't look at your comments, don't look at your likes, don't look at anything like that, because it's not honest, and it's not real people. It's not like people are not treating you like a real human being. The extreme of that is like, I don't care about what anybody thinks. I don't care, and becoming like, but like we do care. We're humans. We need to be seen. We need to be seen and recognized. And to me, that means recognized for our flaws and recognized for our strengths. Like I don't know. I love Larry David, like because like he's the person who everybody wishes they had in their friend group, because he's willing to say the things that might seem offensive or might seem insensitive, and maybe are a little bit insensitive. But like, if everybody walks around tiptoeing around everybody's feelings all the time, like, those people who could be better, myself included, if somebody were to just let them know, like, oh, it's not really, like, it's actually counterproductive for you to use that word because it shuts people's mind off, or it's like, maybe you should, like, I don't know, if you dressed a little differently, or if you were a little bit kinder, like, it would be beneficial. Like, everybody's like in their own world. Oh, don't say anything to him. I think he might be on the spectrum, or oh, like, he comes from this household. I'm like, no, maybe he just needs somebody to, like, give him a little bit of a like pushback. I feel like we're breeding lonely narcissists as opposed to, like, in a large sense, and then the people who are sensitive and who do have good perspectives, like, I don't know, it's way harder to get nuanced, thoughtful perspective to go viral or whatever it is. And we're just walking around afraid of triggering people, and I think people are more resilient than they know themselves, and they're being coddled. And
that's a good question. Like, is there a corollary? Is there scientific research or theory that says that using a certain word around certain people in certain states of mind actually makes them, I don't know, let's say, more dangerous to themselves or to society? Like, can using just a word actually hurt someone's? I mean, I assume, yeah. I mean,
it can hurt their feelings, but just like, okay, so your feelings get hurt. Okay, like, well, like, okay.
It's a snowball effect. Your feelings hurt. You're angry. You're upset. You do own a gun. You know.
Right. I was like, but I don't think the way is to. I don't know. I just, like, what was the line? The difference between it's just silly line, very silly line, but it somewhat relates. Like, it says, "Be brokenhearted." Be brokenhearted that there's no peace in your house. Be brokenhearted about it. Like, you should be brokenhearted about it, and don't, as opposed to being angry and resentful about it. Like, let the be broken heart, and then having a broken heart, like, and recognizing that it's a broken heart, allows you to, like, to try to fix it, as opposed to, like, my reality is reality. If you don't accept my reality, you're triggering me and offending me, and
right. The issue with that is that it takes away your reality. Like, their claim of, like, be sensitive to my reality takes away your reality. So it becomes a double-edged sword where you can't have a conversation like that. You know, if the conversation is like, my reality is being hurt, then it's like, your reality is not strong enough. You know, if my words are able to hurt your reality, then something within your reality is not strong enough, and you gotta figure something out within amongst yourself. I think in terms of, like, you're saying, like, we do have higher, you know, suicide rates, we do have higher depression rates, we have higher all these things where people are more lonely, like, you know, interconnected, what you talk about, dude. We're lonelier, we talk with less people, we go on less dates, we talk to less women, we're more, you know, all that stuff. I think all that stuff is exactly my point. I think as society gets more connected, the people who are not going along with it, the people who are not attuning, molding, you know, being a bit more malleable to what's happening around them, they're going to be the ones who, you know, suffer from it. The ones who don't walk along the path of, like, technology and interconnectivity and sensitivity will be hurt by it, because they're going to be rejects of society who are not willing to be sensitive to the people around them. I think it's the first time, like, in our existence where we have time to think about the thoughts that we're thinking and the emotions that we're feeling. We're very conscious, very, very conscious beings, super conscious, because we have so much time in our hands. Of course we have to make a living, of course we have to feed, but we have so much time. We can do whatever the fuck we want in any moment. Like, you can take, like, a vacation for 2 weeks and you'll probably still be good. And then even in your day-to-day life, like, as time goes along, you have, like, a couple hours a day, you just, like, think, but you have Netflix, and you have TikTok, and you have this thing, and you have this book, and you have that thing. At all angles, you know, things screaming for your attention. So I think also, like, just the fact that we have so much time to think about it, I don't think it's a healthy thing. Like in general, like, yeah, of course you have time to, like, think and be conscious and meditate or whatever it is, but like it's like when you have too much time not like focused on something or different things, like you're gonna get lost in your own. Your mind's not meant to be like just thinking endlessly in itself. Like it's not. It's not good for it. It's you're abusing your mind. You know, like you're abusing your tool. Like your tool is just it's a machine that's like just never ending machine. Like you gotta power off your machine every so often, dude.
Right. I do think on the flip side, though, is human beings are one of our unique characteristics is our ability to be creative, and I think those who are most creative, who are most capable, right? Like they're the ones who they spend the most time in their mind, right? Like there's a certain I think addicts and creative people and are the same thing. I think the people who are driven towards substance abuse and like I mean they're more sensitive. They feel more than other people because there are other people who have shitty lives and shitty situations and they're just kind of okay, right? Like or they're super focused and they're okay with that too. But you just walk around and you talk to people and you realize how many people are like almost painfully creative. Like they need to share, they need to express, but they also just like, but I need to make money. Like I had the most possibly one of the top 5 most meaningful, incredible conversations of my life this past week. I was talking to somebody who I met at Mayer's party, other Mayer, and it was a wild party. I went out with Zach and like we were supposed to do chavrusa, and it was just like we met at WeWork. We ended up having like the most incredible conversation with like 2 and then 3 other people for like an hour and a half. Then we went out to dinner together and just had further incredible just connecting like in a casual way. Like we've always like been. It's like, oh, what are we learning? What are we learning? What are we learning? We went out to eat and we went out and then we were going to go to the party together. We get to the party and it's like dead, boring, and kind of lame. Like in the beginning, and I'm like, this is like kind of awkward. And I'm like, and I could like sit in the awkwardness, and I'm like, no. And I just like flipped the switch, and I'm like, I turned on that side of me, like when you go out, used to go out to town when you're 18 years old, and you just want to like, you're just gonna talk to as many people as you could possibly talk to, and get as many girls' phone numbers as you could possibly get. So I kind of like took that attitude of with just conversations. I'm gonna find the best conversations that I could possibly have here. Like they're all people. So I went and like I just got up and sat down to a random guy, and I'm like, and he's Russian, so I'm like, instead of like, oh, where are you from, blah blah blah, what are you doing? I'm like, I started the conversation with, so how does it feel for everybody to hate your country so much? Like that's where I started the conversation. I just went like kind of outlandish, and then I had a great a solid conversation with him. It lasted 5 minutes, not a big deal. Turned to the guy to my left, ask him start to talk to him, and I also just like, as opposed to me being my kind of like ashamed and bashful and who am I to offer my opinion, I'm like, I'm going on full blown like I came dressed in like a corduroy blazer, button down shirt, like I just like I'm going right into it. I'm just going boss dog Mendel, like my opinion matters, my opinion's significant. And other people, and the people I'm talking to are also, right, like that, both at the same time. So really good listening and then really good feedback and offering my take. Talked to some guy from Guatemala, ask him for me, careers, right? I'm trying to figure out careers. What do you do? Okay, why do you do it? And then, okay, what job do you have? It's like, is that the job that you really want? And then he's like, no, not really. I'm like, well, so then why are you doing it? It's like money, okay. And I'm like, And then I drilled him as to like, okay, what plan is he going to get to? And then I went around talking to a few more people, and all of a sudden at like 11 o'clock, like almost everybody cleared out of the place in like a split second. Like they got a text message saying it's time to leave. The whole place emptied out. Like one of the few people left, I go up to, and it turns out, and I introduced myself to, okay, we had he's like, oh, I know one person from Pittsburgh. Turned out he was my next door neighbor growing up. So like we bonded over that. Sat down on the couch. What do you do? He's like, graphic design. I said, why do you do graphic design? He's like, well, I've been artistic since I was a baby. Like, and I knew I needed to do something creative. Okay, so he chose graphic design. But then it became quite apparent that like he wasn't being so creative, and I started asking, "What like do you have what's your social like? Like, are you putting out your own stuff?" He's like, "No, I work for a big company, and he loves what he does, but like." I just like started to like tickle his like, you need to be creative, you need to be creative. Turns out like this kid, not a kid, older than me, 32. Turns out he had cancer at 27 years old, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. And he put it like that, like in the best thing that ever happened to him. And I started to ask him why it was the best thing that ever happened to him. And he never did drugs, right? He's never done drugs. That's actually how the conversation started. He never did drugs. I was like, I've never done drugs before. I'm like, really? Like, he's like, no, I've never smoked weed, never done anything. I'm like, tell me about it. He's like, and I'm like, is it? And I'm like, is it because you don't have any demons inside, or like your life's been easy, or are you just like, what is it? And he's like, well, it's not that I don't have any demons, like nothing, no suffering to cover up. And like he kind of like didn't say it, and then Mayer's like, you could say it, and he's like, I had cancer, right? Like, and I was like, so how did you get through it? Like, and clearly this is someone who had like, he was very similar to me, like a burning addict, like this burning like personality of like, but like in very regimented and very controlled and very in control. When somebody's so in control and they're that way, it's like, what are you not exploring? What are you hiding from? But he said the way he got through it was by writing a blog about his personal experience. And then, I don't know, before I know it, this guy's telling me, he's like, I've never said this to anybody before. And like, I was being open. I had mentioned something about my difficulties with addiction, and I had mentioned to somebody else something about porn, and then he opened up as like how, like, that's the, like that's the thing that was his addiction, that's the thing he suffered from. And that at the beginning of when he got cancer, he realized he could either he saw all these people who went off the derech, like their lives kind of fell apart. He's like, I didn't want that. He's like, and the only way to not do that was to just run with this, like just fully lean into it and like just run with it. He said, I didn't take a break from life. My life accelerated for a year, right? Like, and he was like, create. I'm like, so do you still write? And he's like, no, but like you can tense the depression and the sadness, and so at the end of the whole thing, at the end of the whole night, we literally ended up talking for like 2.5 hours. People were listening, people were leaving. Like it was a really good conversation, really meaningful, engaged. And at the end of it, he's like, you said something that like really shook me. He said, you said, like, imagine if Dostoevsky and Nietzsche and Einstein didn't create and didn't write what they wrote and didn't do what they do. I was kind of like, I was actually in it, like I would say fuck you, right? Like fuck you for not sharing that with the world. And I'm like, see, if you have what you have your perspective, you have the ability to write, the ability to create, he's an incredible artist, a great writer. He read his poetry, it was so good. Like, I'm like I turned to him and I said, fuck you for not like continuing. Like, and I basically told him to F himself, like in like a, and like, and it was not nice, right? Like it wasn't a nice thing to say. If I was being sensitive to how he was feeling, like I just kind of trusted my instincts of sensitivity and how far the bar could be pushed. Like I do have a really good eye for how far I can push people and how harsh I could be or how soft I have to be, right? And it was just like, and it was the most encouraging thing he's ever heard in his life. Like, and then I saw him again Friday night, and he's like, yeah, like I told my mom, like how I met you, and it was just like, I know, it was empowering for me. I had a few people over the course of the week just say like that, just my openness, my vulnerability, and then my inquisitive nature at the same time. Like people were coming to me like, oh, that thing you said, like I've been writing about it this whole week, or like it's just this. And I'm not nice. I'm very kind. I'm like the most emotional, sensitive person that I know. But I'm not. I don't do it in a way that's kind. But like this, like, but there's nothing like real life. I'm like, why am I trying to grow my following online just go to events like this, meet people with shared interests. Like, and there were people like Rudy Rothman's videographer was there. Like Meyer is like a big Instagram influencer with his account. So like all the influencers of Jerusalem that kind of showed up, and I just networked, and I just and I was just myself, and it was awesome. But to tie it back in, it's anything but like timid and kind, like and nice, and like I was very assertive and very abrasive. Friday night, Yala came with. We showed up for dinner for at Mary's house for dessert, and there was this kid there who just like had all these opinions, but clearly and was so outgoing and all this, but clearly never thought about a single thing coming out of his mouth, and I was just so aggressive, like almost like I'm like holy, and Ella is sitting there grabbing my leg, like Mendel, stop, like, and I'm like no, and I just went harder at the kid and harder at the kid and harder at the kid, and like, and there was no give way, like I didn't see his face, like I said things that you should flinch from, and he didn't flinch. So that to me that was like he needs me to just hit him again and hit him again and hit him again. And what ended up happening, he moved his chair like 5 feet closer and leaned in. Like it was that was what he needed. And then there was another person. Like it's just like, in the end of the day, I think the good thing about the internet is that, and the bad thing is it's given us, so many more of us, the ability to be who we are and create and express. And in a way that it's almost like if I'm not doing it, I'm wasting my gift. I'm not sharing it with the world. 100 years ago, okay, so if Nietzsche wasn't Nietzsche, he would just be a madman. If Winston Churchill didn't have World War II, he would have just been a madman. And I was just thinking, all these people in history who often were looked at as insane, if they had the ability to create, they wouldn't be that way, right? Like all these people who are under bridges right now doing drugs because they couldn't function in society the way other people function because they're very creative, and creative people don't function the same way other people function. They need to be creative. They need to, so what's happened is we've opened up the doors, we've opened up the floodgates to provide those people who otherwise would have just like worked at a bagging job or worked in a coffee shop and like maybe a surf shop and been some guy. Like we've opened up the doors to so many more people who could be creative and should be creative, and so their opinions are out there. So Jordan Peterson, I listened to the first 2 minutes of him talking on Joe Rogan, and they were brought up Sam Harris, and the line Jordan said, I still have hope for Sam Harris. It's like he just has some pretty wild, wacky ideas or whatever. And Jordan says, that's the danger with being creative. Most creative ideas are wrong. And a good section of those are fatal. Occasionally you get one that is necessary. And so in the world that we're living in now, where there's so much more creativity out there, which means there's so much more falsehood, because most things that are new and creative are just, they don't line up with reality. They don't work. They're not really true. And some of those things are actually fatal and dangerous. But what I love is and then occasionally get one that's necessary. And like that the world couldn't, like, what if Freud didn't write his books? Imagine if David HaMelech, what would the world be like if David HaMelech didn't write down his poetry? Just imagine the difference of the world, right? Like, can you imagine, like, how many people have been influenced and changed their lives, and how much poetry and theology and philosophy and writing and creativity was inspired by David HaMelech's words? Like, imagine if it wasn't written down. So for everybody else, you're like, yes, I have all these ideas, but I don't have a printing press. I don't have billions of dollars. I don't have any of these stuff. What could I do? Now, literally, I have a phone, and every moment that I'm not being creative and not sharing and not expressing, that's why to me, my hypothesis is that's why depression's up so much more, is because all of those people who are emotionally sensitive, like, the cognitive dissonance between what they could do and what they are doing is so much greater, because what they could do is so much more due to the tools that we have at our hand. And so you're now experiencing this gap between people who are willing and out and getting ready to create. They already have something in them that is the world kind of needs to hear, because they're afraid of how it's going to be received, or that they're unworthy. And just by knowing that you could be creating, it creates that cognitive dissonance and pushes it further. So that's my hypothesis, that the ability to be creative and the amount of creators in the world never changed. Like, there's always been the same amount of creative people in the world. It's just how many of them get to express themselves. And now all of us that are creative and are good thinkers and are good artists and are good philosophers and have incredible perspectives on business, on life, on relationships, on God, on Torah, on all of that, to the degree of which I'm aware of my capabilities and I'm not actualizing them, I'm going to be depressed. And I'm going to turn to porn, I'm going to turn to drugs, I'm going to turn to anything. And so that's my hypothesis as to the hope of what's going to happen. It means we have to be more discriminatory, we have to be more argumentative, we have to be more critical, because there's going to be more nonsense out in the world. There's going to be more creative ideas out in the world. And like Jordan said, 99% of them are wrong, or not even valuable even. And then a slice of them are going to be dangerous, like gender affirmation theories and critical race theory and all these incredible creative stuff. And then you'll have things like postmodernism, which is an incredible idea, and it's true. It is true, but the outgrowths of postmodernism, not all of them, and that the creative doors that were unlocked due to that idea of postmodernism, of the world being interpreted through the lens of a story. And that even the scientist and even the mathematician is first having their reality filtered through a story before it's fact, is true, right? But what's been exploited, so to be in a world where we need more than ever to hash bad ideas and good ideas out, because that's the only way they get figured out, is in the world of public opinion, right? I put out a bad idea, and if I say it out loud, it's going to get criticized and fixed, or criticized and thrown out. But if I keep it to myself, I'm going to live with that bad idea. So for me, I just have to share my ideas, because I know some of them are bad, but I don't know which ones are bad until I say them out loud, and I don't know which ones are false. And I don't know which ones are true, right? Until they're out loud. And as soon as we become scared of speaking our minds, then it's just going to exponentially snowball a world of bad ideas. So more than ever now, we need to be vigilant about free speech, vigilant about criticism, vigilant about all that stuff, and not being nice, but encouraging at the same time. I'm not being nice because I know you could do better. You could do better. You could do better. You could do better. And to me, that's what Jordan Peterson has done to millions of people. Is you could do better. You could do better, and not because you should, because your life will be better for it if you do better. You will have less misery, less suffering if you just do better. And it starts with cleaning up your room and getting your life in order, and setting a goal, even if it's a shitty goal, and pursuing it, and then figuring it out as you go, as opposed to sitting in one place. And yeah, that's my both vision of the beauty of what's going to happen with social media, what it's providing, and it also answers, I think, why the depression's up and anxiety's up and all that stuff is up.
You can also see how everyone else is being so creative and so beautiful while you're not.
Yeah.
Your face, it seems like we've developed our own philosophy where the crux of it, the root, the ground of it is creativity. It's all roads lead to creativity, and all of good emotions, happiness, comes out from your creation of creativity. It's seek to be creative, and then feel the joy and happiness from your creativity. It's the point where everything meets. From a lot of what you're saying is creativity is something you should strive for, do, create, be in a position where you could be creative, do the creating and then be able to feel the joy from the creation. Whether it's you being creative and going out and being social and you're being creative. You're being creative with your emotion. You're being the most creative. You're being creative on all steps, with your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, and your words. Going out and about. I think especially for you, because we're such conversationalists and we've been around, a lot of people all of our lives. Like, we love talking. Whether it's yeshiva, which was our college years of just all it was just like talking and talk. Our whole yeshiva career was basically talking. Our whole entire thing was talking and having some fun, So like our creative, look what you've done. You're making a podcast, talking to people, getting cool people that you like to talk to. When we first started talking about this a year and a half ago, it was like, I want to talk to cool people. I think that's all of it. Like, that was your form of being creative. It was, let me talk. Like, I feel creative as I talk. Obviously, I make my little videos and I put little, whatever things happen on the videos as well. It's like I think both of us, like, our creativity stems from our talking. So like, you going out and then you feel the creativity, when people tell you like, oh, I talked to my mom about this, or I've been writing about this for the past couple of days, or I sent myself a voice note about this idea that you helped me bring out. That's like, well, like, I was creative, I was out there, I was vulnerable, and now like my creativity is affecting others as well, not just myself. That's like a very rewarding feeling as well.
Absolutely. And I do think, just to clarify, just like creativity, I'd say teachers are inherently creative. I say social workers are inherently creative. I say anybody who is parents are creative. Like, you're always having to come up with creative ways to get what you want at the very least, or to communicate, to this desire to capture, like, and to share. Like, sharing is a creative act, fundamentally. And the moment you share anything, it is on different levels of resolution, an act of creativity. And this need, and in order to connect, it's connection and creativity. I haven't figured out exactly the wording, but like, they're inextricably linked. Like, and we connect by our being creative. We put out, we express, we could be like the Ein Sur Ke'Elokeinu. Ella, don't read it Ein Sur, Ella Ein Sire. Don't read it there's no rock like our God. Rather, there's no artist like our God. Like, that's one of the dogmas that's been running through my head for the last 9 years, is that you can get to know God by looking at His creation. You get to know somebody by what they put out into the world. And that's the only way anybody could ever get to know me. And to a degree, that's the only to the degree of which I exist, meaning I choose, I create, I'm creating my life, right? Like, I'm choosing which life path to go on. Like, that's a creative act. Like, and to realize that I am the creator, I'm the author, I am the director, I am, like, of my book, of my life, of my film, of my script. Like, to me, that's what existentialism philosophy is. That's what, that's what it is. And so even if you're not, oh, I'm not an artist, right? Like, oh, I'm not musical, but like, you are. But like, if you're, to the degree of which you're existing in any meaningful way, you're going to be creative. And the moment we step into like a rut of like, I'm just going to go down the beaten path, that doesn't really take creativity. That just takes, I'm just basically a buoy floating through the world. Like, and then you don't really exist. And then your hesped at your funeral won't have that much in it. And like, what relationships did I create? What lives that, like, so I would really like to fine tune this idea. But
I believe you can get to a point of too much creativity. Can you create too much? Can you give too much?
I think I would say yes, but I mean, maybe a little dishonest, but I would just say that yes, but only if you're not taking care of yourself. So like, that's where, like, I guess the mental health aspect comes into it. So if you're playing music, if you're locked in a basement painting and you forget life exists and you starve yourself, then yes, like, and you dehydrate, or you're neglecting your relationships and you're neglecting your friend, like, you're neglecting what you could be creative in a way that's not at all meaningful. Like that's also
That's
possible.
already right. So that's more like the time basis. That's like you're just not. That's more like a body. Like you're not taking care of your body. So I'm saying like in art itself, like because we've definitely shunned certain types of art. Pornography, is shunned by most people. Pornography could be art. I mean, obviously nowadays it's not at all. It's pay for a subscription on OnlyFans or whatever it is. But I mean, look at art. Like if you ever been to an art show, maybe not in Jerusalem, but if you ever been to an art show outside Jerusalem, at every art show I've been to, at every moment, there's always that one booth. There's a booth. There's always that booth there where you walk in and there's curtains, and it's a nudist, whatever it might be. It's an image of either a penis or a woman's body, whatever it might be, and it's considered art. It's very considered art. And also, not even inside the booths, there women and cocks as well. Like they're pervasive through art. They're everywhere in art. Everything. Like when you think of art, the human body is associated with art. Obviously, our sick mind perverts it and has it as oh, it's pornography, but the body itself is art. I mean, if exactly the puzzle that you're saying. Don't read it like a rock. You read it like the artist. Well, what more is a form of art than the very shape of what it is that we are?
Right.
But we do like the thought in general is like, is there art that we like across the board as humanity say no? Like that's no. Like we're not want to accept this type of creativity.
I'd say yeah. It goes back to I'd say if every new idea is a creative idea, right? Every new philosophy is creative. Not all creativity, like Jordan says, most creativity is not worthy. Sometimes my kid is painting something, and yes, I want to compliment to the degree of which like I want to encourage creativity, but at the end of the day, like what the hell is that? You didn't do it. You just mixed all the colors together and left a brown whatever. Like that's you created something. It doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's valuable. So I'm thinking that there has to be some element of virtue and this element of giving and sharing and contributing in some way with your creativity. Otherwise, it won't fulfill whatever your true desire to be creative is. Like creativity in its purest form, right? Like is creating life, like reproduction. Like the line that made Eli Nash like is like that was a good way to get my creative juices flowing for the week, right? Just after you had relations, just the guy in wow, I didn't realize that's why they're called creative juices, right? Like that because that's what it is.
The most creative thing you could be doing. I mean, the most creation, like
yeah. That's the act of creation, and creation is something that brings more life into the world and sustains life and enhances life. And if it's creativity that doesn't do those things, then okay, you do you, man. But like, I do question the creativity that is valued in society today. Like that would be a reflection of maybe the corruption in our souls, for lack of a better word, to what we are ascribing value to. The paintings that people are spending millions of dollars on, when they're just perverse and grub and gross and just totally deconstructive as opposed to constructive. Like deconstructive is art, right? Like it's just like literally the goal of it is to just mock art, and mock it as if it's purely subjective and as if there is no value. I disagree. I do think that when somebody walks in and sees a Rembrandt, they recognize the beauty. When someone walks in and sees a beautiful woman, they recognize the beauty. When someone sees an ugly woman, they're also a creation. I'm sorry, but they're ugly. And I don't know.
I was thinking of the podcast that you sent me of Eli Nash and Faith. Amazing. Thank you for sharing, bro. Can you ask him a question? I mean, you do what you want to do, but the only question I have, it's more. It's not like a. I'm just gonna ask the question. I want you to ask him if he's happy.
All right, I'll ask him. He has said that I've heard him say that he's not he's like, at least I don't I'm not being driven to destroy myself, right? Like I'm not like just I mean I'm gonna ask him because at the end of the day him sharing his story was a creative act, right? He allowed for new doors to be open in the world. And he had this overwhelming sense of, right, like they talk about shame, or Brene Brown talks about shame, is somehow that if people see who I am, right, if I'm expressive, if I'm creative, if I just let people know who I am, I'm open, then they're going to reject me for it. They're going to see how gross and disgusting I am for it. And to me, it could be a true belief, right? Like if somebody, like I just need to tell people how I'm, like, and you see people like this who like trying to normalize their pedophilia or some other disgusting things like that. Like there's there's this guy who calls himself literally refers to himself as God in a living body in 2023, and his girlfriends are 12 and 13 years old, and he's a 40-year-old man, and he believes, and he's on Instagram, and he's on Twitter, and he's not banned, and he believes that a 5-year-old could consent, right? So,
who is this?
I'll try to find his account. I got banned from Twitter for commenting on his shit, because I said...
You got banned from Twitter for commenting on his shit, but the shit that you commented on is not banned.
Correct.
Nice. I love how that works.
Because somebody said, how is this guy allowed? Oh, it was Matt Walsh reposted him saying, how is this guy allowed? Like, how is this guy not like on death row? And how is he allowed to be walking around? And how is he allowed to be walking around in society? And I said, I'm okay with him walking around as long as as long as he's castrated, has no arms, no eyes, and no legs or whatever. And I got. And like I said, I'm okay with him being out and about as long as he is incapable of interacting or soaking up the world. Was essentially the point I was trying to make. But I got rightfully banned, like flagged as promoting violent action and stuff like that.
I can see it.
I get it. I understood it. I took it. It was worth saying. It was only a 72-hour ban.
You got slapped on the wrist.
Yeah, slap on the wrist. But yeah, so I'll ask him, are you happy? And I mean, obviously, it's the type of question that if he's going to pause, he's going to stop, and he's going to be like, what do you mean by happy? And we'll see what he says. It's a good question.
Yeah. That's just what I felt after, that's what I would have asked him after listening to that podcast.
Right. And by the way, what she called a love addiction, right? How it's not a desire to escape, it's a desire to connect. I think that really my understanding of what we talked about of creativity and connection is all addiction stems from a deep, undying desire to connect and relate, and in the acute awareness of that we're separate, that we're not connected, and that we aren't doing that. I mean, that's Eric Fromm in his Art of Loving says the root of all anxiety and is our awareness of our separateness, right? The moment that we ate from the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra, is the moment we became self-conscious. And the moment we're self-conscious, we realize we're naked and that we need to put clothes on and we need to protect ourselves. We're ashamed. And the activities that we pursue, the pursuits that we have in order to stop that we can either, the unhealthy ones are like orgiastic experiences is what Eric Fromm describes it as like you take drugs. So when certain drugs make the outside world disappear, which means you're no longer disconnected from anything, or they make you disappear. So there's no longer a you to be disconnected. And the real solution to that is love, which is being connected, like making love, get your creative juices flowing, interacting and learning how to love, and not just learning how to be loved, but learning how to love, and realizing that it's not that I'm not lovable. It's that I need to figure out how should I be loved. Oh, what car do I need? What house do I need? What manners do I need to have? How white do my teeth need to be? Like, those are all things of us anxiously wanting to be loved. And his whole switch is, no, the difficult thing is to learn how to love. Like,
my most touching, strongest emotion has been longing, always. Longing has always been my strongest emotion. The root of like my most emotions, like the longing, you know, like the longing that like we talk about, like in like Tisha B'Av, for like the base of Migdash, like that type of longing. I had that longing like deep inside me for whatever, I don't even know what, just like a longing, you know. Just a longing. I mean, I moved when I was very young, in formative years, so that my dad always mentioned I could because of that as well. Like I just have like that sense of like longing. Like it's that's one of the things I have to let go of. I have to let go of my longing for a better, whatever, and put in the blank, you know.
I don't know how quickly you have to run, but I disagree with you. I think you have to. I think you have to find out what you're longing for and clarify it, and then actually pursue it. Because you can't. That's your Yetzer. That's what Yetzer is. You can't squish your Yetzer. You have to figure out what to do, and whether it's longing for belonging or longing for recognition or longing for attention, or whatever you're longing for, there's a root to whatever you're longing for. And I propose to create in some way, to make your mark on the world, to make the world a better place, or to whatever it is. You have to figure out what it is.
It's like I am longing now that I know that I am a longing person, that I have longed. Where do I want to belong? Like, do I want to belong in my relationship, in my creativity, in basketball, in life, in finance, in money? Like, the fact that you can be longing, it's almost like a quality. Like, oh wow, you have a deep longing, which means that you'll probably stick to something for a long time and get what you want at the end of the day. It's a quality, you know? Now, where do you want to apply this long to? Okay, go sit down, make a decision, and apply longness. It's funny. I wonder if you know, if there is any interest in the fact that longing is called being long. Like maybe longing is a quality needed to get somewhere that's far. That's, if you want to, like, you know, like in words, like you make something long, like you make a distance, like you have like a direction to it. You have like, okay, like let's go with it. You know, you have like an idea. You want it to elongate. You want it to keep on going. You know. I wonder if that's any correlating in that. You see what I sent you on what they said in the. This guy that talks about despair. Like, we have all these words, and we love it when we hear it. Like, you know, like we have a responsibility, the ability to respond is the responsibility. So despair is when you're not feeling paired. You're despairing. You're paired not. You know, like you feel despair.
And belonging, going back to Art of Loving, it's a longing. What all longing is. The root of all longing is just to belong. And so what is it? To be part of something larger than yourself, to belong somewhere, to be needed, to be wanted, to be desired, to be of significance. And we're afraid to do it because if we stand out, we're vulnerable. Like that's literally like if somebody walks into a room with a bunch of people wearing white shirts and there's some guy wearing a pink shirt and the guy's trying to shoot people, the first person that's going to catch his eye is the guy in the damn pink shirt. The zebra that, from a tactile point of it, from a vulnerability, what is vulnerability? Is afraid of being attacked. So I could become part of a group, right? I can become Haredi. I could become. The reason, like Eric Fromm talks about in his Escape from Freedom, he says there's freedom from and freedom to. And so in the early 20th century, we were released from all of our shackles. We were totally free to choose whatever we wanted to choose. But that is the scariest thing in the world. So what we went and embraced things like Maoist China and Soviet Russia and totalitarian, all these totalitarian states out of, like, that's the desire to belong, and it was so effective because God was not there anymore, and they recognized that all humans long, they all long, and some of us are just more attuned to our longing than others, and yeah, you might get shot, right? You might get disbarred, you might whatever it is if you stand out, but do it for something that you value, that you believe that even if you there's nothing more heroic than to die a hero's death, like type deal. Like, and if you have that type of self-destructive attitude, almost. That I'm willing to not just stand out, but to be outstanding, as Rav Sheftel would say, right? Don't stop trying to stand out. Be outstanding. So you got to figure. We all. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's why we relate. Is because we both long. We long for something, and I mean, I propose one answer, which is to be creative, to share, to connect. We long for connection. Maybe it's something else. But that's our job, to figure out what it is and try, and then realize, nope, that wasn't it. That was not the thing I really wanted. And that's the best realization ever. Like what better realization is there that, like, if you pursued something that you thought you wanted and you found out that that isn't it?